Hi everyone. Today we will continue with the same topic, that's the French Revolution part 3 for class 9. Content: the outbreak of the revolution, voting system in the old regime, formation of the National Assembly, unrest in the towns and cities, unrest in the countryside, consequence of the revolt, and Constitution of 1791. So let's begin with the outbreak of the revolution. As you have seen in the previous lessons that King Louis XVI was compelled to increase the taxes. The king on his own will could not impose taxes in the old regime of France. Proposal for the new taxes was passed in a meeting of Estates General. So what is Estates General? It was a political body consisting of the representatives of the three estates. Only king had the power to decide to call a meeting of the estates general. This means that only king had the power to decide when to call a meeting of the estate general and could not impose taxes on his own will in the old regime of France. The last meeting of the Estates General was held in 1614. So let's look at the graphical representation of the Estates General. First estate, the clergy, their representatives. Second estate, nobility, their representatives. And the third estate, their representatives, they all form the estate general. Meeting of May 5th, 1789 at the hall in Versailles. So what happened in this meeting? King Louis XVI called the meeting of the Estates General to pass the proposal for imposing the new taxes on the people. So the members of the first two estates sent 300 representatives each and were seated in rows facing each other. So let's see this also through graphical representation. So this is the first estate with 300 representatives, second estate 300 representatives, and the third estate with 600 representatives, and all of them stood at the back of the hall. Prosperous and educated members were present in the third estate, but the peasants, the artisans, and women, they were denied the entry, and hence their grievances and their demands, they were listed in 40,000 letters given to representatives. Voting system in the old regime, that's the next topic. Voting in the Estates General was based on the principle of each estate had one vote. Even King Louis XVI wanted voting to take place in the same way. But the third estate wanted change in the voting system and wanted voting should include all the members of the assembly and principle of voting to be each individual member to have one vote. Rousseau in the book The Social Contract had advocated one member, one vote as one of the democratic principles. And King rejected the suggestion. And as a result, the protesting members of the third estate walked out of the assembly. Formation of the National Assembly. Representatives of the third estate began to speak on behalf of the whole French nation. The third estate formed National Assembly on 20th June at an indoor tennis court in Versailles and took a collective oath not to separate until the constitution of the kingdom is established. It is known as the tennis court oath. They decided they would draft a constitution for France and they will limit the powers of the monarch. The National Assembly was led by Mirabeau and Abbé Sieyès. Mirabeau was a noble and he belonged to a noble family, but he believed that a society formed on the basis of feudal privileges should change. To spread his ideas, he published a journal and addressed the crowd assembled at Versailles. Abbé was a priest. He wrote a powerful pamphlet titled What is the Third Estate? Unrest in the towns and cities. So, at the time when the National Assembly was drafting a constitution, there was rebel and unrest in the other parts of France as well. The disorder further spread due to rising prices. There was a severe winter that year, resulting in the poor harvest. So the bakers took advantage of this situation and they started hoarding the raw materials for making bread. And that led to the rise in the prices of the bread. Women had to wait in long queues for a long time at the bakery and they became angry and they started attacking the shops. On the other hand, we have the king who ordered the troops to move into Paris, and as a result, on 14 July, the agitated crowd stormed and destroyed the Bastille. Now, unrest in the countryside. There were rumors that the lords of manor had hired the bands of brigands to destroy the ripe crops. Manor and estate consisting of lord's lands and his mansion. Peasants got scared and they collected hoes and pitchforks and attacked chateau. Chateau is a castle or stately residence belonging to king or a nobleman. Hoarded grain was looted and all documents of records of manorial deaths were burned down, and as a result many nobles left from their homes and some migrated to other countries. Consequence of protest. Louis XVI relented to the protesting people by recognizing the National Assembly, accepted limiting his powers by the Constitution, and on 4th August 1789, a decree to abolish the feudal system was passed in the National Assembly, where the members of the first estate, that is the clergy, they had to give up their privileges. Then tithes were abolished. Tithes were the taxes that were levied by the church on the peasants, where they have to pay 1/10 of the agricultural produce. That tax was also abolished. Land owned by the church was taken by the state, and the state acquired assets worth 2 billion livres. Now, France becomes a constitutional monarchy. Now, in 1791, the drafting of the constitution was completed by the National Assembly. The main objective of the constitution was to limit the power of the monarch. Power was separated and assigned to different institutions like legislature, executive, judiciary, instead of being concentrated in the hands of the monarch. So, this was the philosophy which was given by Montaigne, where he also said the same thing, that there should be separation of power and balance as well between the different institutions or different branches of the government, that's the legislature, executive, and the judiciary. So France became a constitutional monarchy in 1791. Constitution of 1791. The National Assembly was vested the power to make laws, and this National Assembly was indirectly elected. Who elected? Citizens voted. Citizens voted for elected electors, and these elected electors, they chose the assembly members. Citizens were of two types, active and passive. Active citizens, they were only men, and men above 25 years who can pay taxes equal to at least 3 days of laborer's wage were called as active citizens. And passive, remaining men and women, they were termed as passive citizens. A person who was an elector and also a member of assembly must be in the highest bracket of taxpayers. Beginning of the constitution. So it began with declaration of rights of man and citizens. Right to life, right to freedom of speech, right to freedom of opinion, and right to equality before law. All these rights were called as natural and inalienable rights. Natural and inalienable rights are those rights that belong to each human being by birth and it could not be taken away. Protection of each citizen's natural rights was the duty of the state. This is for your reference.